this chamber would be well aware, Australia used to have a soft plastic recycling scheme known as REDCycle. You would collect your soft plastics and packaging from home, usually from products bought from a supermarket, and return them back to the supermarket. Not many Australians gave it a second thought about what the next step was and what happened after the collection of soft plastics occurred. Furthermore, this chamber would be aware that Australia no longer has a program like this, and it is a tragedy. The collapse of REDCycle in November last year is still reverberating across the recycling and waste industry today. More than 6 months after they collapsed and 3 months after being declared insolvent, they found that there was stockpiling of collected soft plastics around the country, and unable to pay for storage fees, it seemed it was no answer to be had. But most Australian packaging that had a logo on it was going to REDCycle, indicating that it could be returned to the store and be processed and taken care of it. This stockpiling of soft plastic waste in warehouses around the country was raised as a huge risk by the Environmental Protection Agency. In an update on the website in late February this year, REDCycle partially blamed the COVID-19 and subsequent mass increase in online shopping with its extra plastic packaging, and that led to the increase of more than 350% from its figures in 2019. At the height, they said they were collecting 5 million pieces of soft plastic every day. And then the straw that broke the camel's back of this system was a fire at their largest takeoff partner. In November 2022, the decade-old and largest soft plastic recycling program in Australia was paused with immediate effect. It hasn't returned, and that is where we find us here today. As the pandemic dragged on, the economy flattened the market, and the need for recycling plastic went the other way and diminished. It certainly didn't increase by 350%. So the input was becoming too great for the output. It was an excessive supply and a market problem. Following the collapse of REDCycle, the major supermarket retailers of Aldi, Woolworths and Coles created a soft plastics task force. This task force was the authorisation of the ACCC, where they have 12 months to collaborate and manage a short-term solution to the soft plastic stockpile and to facilitate a resumption of in-store collection for recycling. That 12-month clock began to tick in March this year. They've also released a roadmap to restart with core objectives of resuming access to soft plastic recycling throughout Australian supermarkets, restoring public confidence in soft plastic recycling and maximising the recovery of soft plastics. Recycling in Australia is a system built on good collection, sorting, vigorous infrastructure to process and remake, and strong end markets for recycled material and products. Recycling must be economically viable and sustainable for long-term solutions. According to the statistics released by the federal government in 2021 National Plastics Plan, Australians used 3.5 million tonnes of plastic in 2018 and 19, of which around 60% was imported. Another statistic out of the National Plastics Plan in that report gets through that 70 billion pieces of soft, scrunchable plastic, such as soft plastic bags and food wrappers annually. That equates to roughly 2,700 soft plastic items per person. In fact, according to data from the Minderoo Foundation, per head of population, we consume more plastics than any other nation, almost 60 kilos a year. That's right, more than any other nation. That is several kilograms ahead of the US and almost 4 times the global average. Focus has been on processing soft plastics, not on post-sale of recycled plastics. An economic lens needs to be added to this process. What to do with the recycled content isn't a post-recycled problem, REDCycle problem, and governments across the country have been attempting to fix this issue prior to its collapse, partially spurred on by the announcement that China wouldn't import the world's rubbish anymore from 2017. Both the former state and federal governments contributed to $45 million of recycling modernisation fund, where state, federal and local businesses were able to match the funding to further enhance South Australia's reputation as a nation leader in waste management. The Liberal Party has much to be proud of from its time in government to protect and conserve our environment. As with the Labor in government, both state and federal, I hope to see a bipartisan approach to finding an ongoing viable solution. But I think one of the biggest improvers for the environment was the work done within single-use plastics. And while substantially delayed, we are pleased that the current government are still working to continue this, and any further bans would seek to improve the situation in South Australia. Governments can take a strong lead in conserving our environment. We're all aware of the strong leadership South Australia has had with the Container Deposit Recycling Scheme. And this year that scheme will be harmonising across the country, with Victoria and Tasmania getting on the scheme some 40 years after South Australia led the way. We know that some councils or regions and some groups are trying to tackle these soft plastics problem on their own, but the separate groups wouldn't have the same impact as a statewide recycling system. Here in Adelaide, there is a 12-month trial of soft plastic collection with partnership of Green Industries SA and the National Plastic Recycling Scheme, a project led by the Australian Food and Grocery Council. This trial is underway in the City Council and the City Councils of Charles Sturt and Port Adelaide and Enfield Council. What this select committee would hope to achieve in this motion, I think, is one of the key elements is to be able to identify long and short-term opportunities and solutions to ensure soft plastics can be recycled in South Australia. I've consulted with a number of key players in the ecosystem, including YCA Recycling at Winfield, a major industrial recycler, ResourceCo, from right here in Adelaide, a global player in this important industry. In talking to experts, it is apparent that when considering a recycling scheme such as this, it's important to think of the end product and ask the question, what could be recycled, and importantly, the economic benefit. The collecting, the sorting and even the recycling can come later in a way. If there is no market for the end product, which we saw with the demise of REDCycle in the first place, one could argue that there isn't a strong enough system to be able to recycle in the first place. And that is where we find us here today. A parliament without all the answers, but the strong tools to understand and possibly find a pathway forward, so that those in the community who seek to do good by their environment can do so in an efficient and successful way. This isn't the issue that can be exported and out of sight and out of mind. We must tackle it. It's been proven before. So as a parliament, let's seek to understand the barriers and work together to ensure that recycling of soft plastic can continue. I commend the motion to the Council. Thank you, Mr. President.